Welcome to The Debate. Today, we're dissecting a shift in the creator economy that is effectively killing the Zoom aesthetic. We're looking at the Voxel Micro Video Lab, and the promise here is bold, taking the business creator out of the messy bedroom and dropping them into a space that offers the, quote, visual punch of a TV set.
It's a fascinating pivot. Yeah, we are seeing a move from, authentic amateurism towards something more like accessible rigor. It raises a fundamental question about what actually constitutes quality in this modern video-first era.
Right, and that is the central question we're wrestling with today. How is that TV set aesthetic actually achieved? Is it a triumph of hardware? The sheer brute force of 4K resolution, professional lighting grids, and camera sensors? Or is it something more subtle?
That is exactly where I stand. I'm here to argue that the professional feel isn't about adding more pixels. It's about exclusion. It's about the acoustic intimacy, the sound treatment, and the environmental control that subtracts the chaos of the real world.
And I take the position that the visual punch is exactly what it claims to be, a visual metric. It is achieved through a full-scale production suite of high-end equipment that, well, most businesses simply cannot afford to own. I represent the hardware.
And I represent the environment.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
When I analyze the Voxel proposition, specifically this concept of precision content engineering, I'm looking at a value equation based on capital expenditure. The text calls this a high-tech fast lane. Why? Because technically speaking, this is a TV studio. We are talking about a full-scale production suite compressed into a smaller footprint.
Compressed being the operative word there.
Sure, but the physics of the image don't change just because the room is smaller. The reason a user walks out with that polished look is because the hardware is doing the heavy lifting. The source material is explicit. This is about professional 4K content. It implies that the lighting is dialed in before you even arrive. I mean, think about the average business owner. They don't know about key lights, fill lights, or hair lights. They don't know color temperature. Voxel provides that output through sheer hardware capability. It allows a small business to look like they have an outsourced content department. That is a visual argument. The camera lens is the distinct barrier to entry here.
Okay, but I understand why you're gravitating toward the specs. 4K is a flashy number. It sells subscriptions. But I look at the problem solver aspect of the Voxel Lab differently. If we ask what problem is actually being solved for the small business, it isn't just a lack of a camera. You can buy a decent mirrorless camera at an electronics store today for a reasonable price. The problem is the messy bedroom.
Which is a lack of professional aesthetic.
But define that aesthetic. It's a lack of control. The definition of a lab versus a bedroom is the sound-treated environment. You can shoot sharp 4K video in a tiled bathroom, and it will still look and sound like a bathroom. It creates cognitive dissonance. The TV set feel that Voxel promises, that acoustic intimacy of a recording booth, is what separates the amateur from the pro. It is the isolation. They've created a controlled environment that eliminates echoes and distractions. The visual punch is rendered meaningless if the audio has a high noise floor or room reverb. So the lab feel comes from what is excluded from the recording, not just what is illuminated.
I appreciate the focus on audio, and we definitely need to unpack that, but I think you're underestimating the turnkey factor of the lighting. This is point one of our debate. The source material highlights that pro lighting is already dialed in.
Dialed in. It's a great marketing term, but what does that actually mean in practice?
It means the difference between looking like a hostage video and looking like a CEO. I mean, do you know how difficult it is to get lighting dialed in? That is the single biggest friction point for creators. The messy bedroom aesthetic is often just poor illumination, shadows under the eyes, mixed color temperatures from a window and a desk lamp. Voxel's value is that they have technically solved the physics of light for the user. This creates that immediate visual punch. When you sit down in that lab, the equipment is positioned to create depth and separation from the background. It's a hardware solution to an aesthetic problem. That is why it feels like a TV set, because TV sets have professional gaffers, and Voxel has automated that role through their equipment setup.
I'm not convincing myself that it's purely the hardware doing that work, though. I agree lighting is crucial, but is it just the bulbs in the softboxes, or is it the modular filming environment they exist within?
I think the bulbs and the stands and the diffusion panels, they matter a great deal. You can't replicate that with a ring light.
But consider this. The Voxel definition of a micro-footprint describes an intimate, controlled environment. The lighting works because it is contained. In a bedroom or an office, you are fighting variables. You're fighting the sun moving across the sky, changing your exposure every 10 minutes. You're fighting the glare off a whiteboard. In the Voxel lab, the lighting is dialed in specifically because the environment allows it to be static. It's a turnkey facility, not just because the lights are expensive, but because the space is designed to accept the light perfectly without reflection or interference. The hardware relies on the room.
But the user experience, the thing they're paying for, is the access to the gear. The brochure says, stop doing video, start building your lab. It compares the lab to the $10,000 in gear that a business owner doesn't have. That tells me the value proposition is financial leverage. The user is renting access to a capital investment they cannot afford. They're renting the photons, essentially. They're paying to look like they own a RED camera and an aperture light kit.
And yet, I would argue they are also renting the silence. Which brings us to the audio. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the visual is the primary driver of authority. There's a concept in psychoacoustics. People will watch a blurry video with great sound, but they will click off a 4K video with bad sound in less than 3 seconds.
That is a fair metric, but does it create the TV set feel or just a radio feel?
It creates the professional feel. If you watch a video with 4K visuals and echoey, distant audio, it feels like a high-definition home movie. It feels amateur. The acoustic intimacy Voxel offers is the harder metric to achieve. You can buy a light at a big box store. You cannot buy silence at a store. You have to build it. You need mass, you need absorption, you need bass traps. The sound-treated environment is the infrastructure of the lab. That is what allows for the deep dive interviews mentioned in the source material.
I see your point about quality and retention, but I would frame the audio equipment differently. I don't think it's just about the artistic concept of intimacy. The Voxel material talks about micro turnaround. It says the lab is designed for live-to-tape recording.
Let's clarify live to tape for the listeners. This essentially means recording the content in a single take that is ready to publish immediately with, no post-production or editing required.
Exactly. Minimal editing is needed after you finish. To me, the pro audio equipment isn't just about atmosphere. It is a piece of content engineering for efficiency. The reason you need that high-end shotgun microphone or that broadcast dynamic mic is to ensure the file is clean enough to upload the second you step out of the booth. It's part of the high-tech fast lane. If the audio was bad, you'd have to spend hours in software trying to fix it. So the gear is functional hardware designed for speed, not just atmospheric art.
That is a compelling argument for efficiency. But have you considered that live to tape is physically impossible without that atmospheric control? If a siren goes off outside your messy bedroom, or your dog barks, or the AC unit kicks on, your live-to-tape session is ruined. You have to cut, you have to edit. The Voxel Lab eliminates distractions. It offers the reliability of a recording booth. That reliability is environmental, not electronic. You are paying for the guarantee that the world won't intrude on your content. That is what makes it feel like a professional studio, the separation from the chaos of daily life. The microphone just captures the silence that the room provides.
We are sort of dancing around the definition of quality here. Let's talk about the 4K aspect again. The source material explicitly promises professional 4K content. This is the high-end technology that allows a small business to look like a major player.
4K is the standard now, yes. Even phones shoot 4K.
Well, it is more than a standard. It is a differentiator in flexibility. When we talk about content engineering, we have to talk about cropping. If you shoot in professional 4K, you have a massive canvas. You can punch in for a close-up without losing quality. You can crop a horizontal video into a vertical one for TikTok without it looking pixelated. The visual punch is literally the resolution and the clarity of the image, allowing for that manipulation. The Voxel Lab is a full-scale production suite. That implies cameras with large sensors, prime lenses, high bit rates. When we ask what creates the aesthetic, surely the camera pointing at the subject is the primary answer.
I question if the pixel count is the defining feature in the modern era, though. The source material discusses micro content. It specifically mentions formatting for 9.16 vertical and 16.9 horizontal formats.
Which requires high-resolution source material to crop effectively, as I said.
True, but the TV set feel of today isn't cinema. It's not Game of Thrones. It's high-impact, short-form videos. It's TikToks, Reels, LinkedIn Shorts. The visual punch there comes from the precision of the framing and the immediate clarity, not necessarily just the raw pixel count. And here's a crucial nuance. The equipment changes.
How so?
We know that Voxel is always updating their equipment to the best quality. The camera you use today might be different next year, but the lab, the Voxel itself as a building block, remains the constant. The TV set feel is about the consistency of that look. The specific camera matters less than the fact that the lab provides a consistent professional backdrop. If you shoot one video on a Sony and the next on a Canon, but the room and the sound are identical, the brand remains consistent. If you change the room, the brand breaks.
I'm not sure I agree that the camera matters less. The reason Voxel updates the equipment is precisely because the technology drives the aesthetic. If they stopped updating the gear, the TV set feel would degrade into a vintage feel very quickly. The hardware maintenance is central to the value proposition. The high-end production claim depends entirely on having that cutting-edge gear. If I walk into a Voxel lab and they have a 5-year-old webcam, I am walking out. I am there for the high-tech.
But let's look at the alternative. The messy bedroom. You framed this earlier as a financial calculation. The user lacks the $10,000 in gear.
That is what the text implies. Most business owners don't have the space or, the liquid cash to dump into a studio they might use once a week.
But I would argue the messy bedroom is primarily a lack of focus, not just funds. You can spend $10,000 on gear, put it in a messy bedroom, and it still looks like a messy bedroom. You just have a very sharp, well-lit image of your laundry pile.
A valid point. It would be a very sharply focused laundry pile.
Voxel frames itself as a problem solver. It says, stop doing video, start building your lab. That implies construction, structure. The Voxel Lab is a specialized studio designed specifically for micro-content. It's a place you go to work. The TV set aesthetic comes from the fact that it is a dedicated space. When you walk in, you enter a production mindset because the environment dictates it. The messy bedroom has a bed in it. It has domestic distractions. The Voxel Lab has purpose. That psychological shift translates to the screen. You look more professional because you feel more professional in that space.
That's an interesting psychological angle, but I stick to the physical reality. The production mindset is triggered by seeing a massive softbox light and a professional microphone on a boom arm. The source says this is a turnkey solution. Turnkey implies I turn the key and the machine starts. The machine is the equipment. The visual punch is the output of that machine. If Voxel was just a quiet room with an iPhone, it wouldn't be a micro video lab. It would just be a quiet room. The lab designation comes from the instruments inside it.
And if Voxel was a noisy street corner with a red camera, it wouldn't be a studio. It would be a news-gathering operation. The studio feel requires the sound-treated environment. You cannot decouple the gear from the room.
A fair point. But consider the agility mentioned in the future forward section. Scaled down for maximum agility. The equipment is chosen to be micro-scale, hassle. The TV set aesthetic is usually associated with massive crews, a grip, a gaffer, a camera op. Voxel achieves this with a compressed suite. That is a technological achievement. The equipment itself is doing the job of the crew. Autofocus, auto-exposure, preset lighting ratios.
I agree with the agility aspect, but that agility is enabled by the environment. The micro footprint allows for that speed. You can walk in, hit record, and walk out because the environment is static. It is dialed in and doesn't change. If you rely solely on gear in your own home, you have to set it up every time. You have to move the cat, close the blinds, adjust the stand. The lab is a permanent state of readiness.
I think we're converging on the idea of readiness. For me, that readiness is the pre-configured nature of the high-end technology. It's the fact that the 4K pipeline is ready to go. The high-tech fast lane is about speed of execution.
And for me, the readiness is the isolation. The fact that the acoustic intimacy is always there waiting for you to speak. It's the absence of friction.
It is interesting to look at the micro-content definitions again. Optimized for formats that dominate social media. The TV set aesthetic is being redefined by these labs. It used to mean a news desk with a skyline background. Now it means a crisp, well-lit, perfectly sounded talking head video.
Correct. And that talking head needs to be separated from the background noise of the internet. The voxel acts as a building block for a digital presence. It provides a foundation. You cannot build a brand on a shaky foundation, and a messy bedroom is a shaky foundation. It implies you're a hobbyist.
I like that metaphor. And to extend it, the hardware is the skyscraper you build on top of that block. You need the foundation, yes, but the visual punch, the thing people actually see and marvel at, is the structure itself. The 4K resolution, the lighting ratios, the crispness of the image, that is what stops the scroll. You scroll past the amateur, you stop for the professional.
Perhaps, but the audio is what keeps them listening. If you stop the scroll but they can't hear you clearly, or the sound fatigues their ears, they keep moving.
Let's bring this to a conclusion because I think we've identified a fascinating interplay here between the tangible gear and the intangible environment.
We have. It's not as simple as just buying a better camera.
I maintain that the visual punch of the Voxel Micro Video Lab, the thing that truly sells it as a TV set equivalent, is the full-scale production suite. It's the hardware superiority. It is the fact that for a fraction of the cost and space, you get the technological output of a major studio. The lighting is dialed into professional standards, the resolution is professional 4K, and that creates the polished look that defines the brand in a crowded feed.
And I maintain that while the gear is essential, the true definition of the lab is the controlled environment. It's the acoustic intimacy and the sound-treated nature of the space that allows that gear to function. The TV set feel is actually a feel of exclusion, removing the amateur markers of echo, noise, and distraction to create a space of authority.
It seems that Voxel has successfully created a synthesis of these two needs. You can't have the high-tech fast lane without the road being paved first.
I agree. It bridges the gap. It offers the visual punch you prize, combined with the acoustic intimacy I prioritize.
And in doing so, it allows creators to stop doing video in the amateur sense and start building their lab.
Whether you're there for the pixels or the silence, the result is the same. You walk out with professional content that works.
A new way to build your digital presence, indeed. Thank you for listening.
Until next time,